So what I'm going to describe is something that's probably happened to most users of GameMaker Studio 2 at some point or another, and that is that you run your game, and your game takes a few seconds to build, and everything's fine. You can walk around, you can talk to people, you can do whatever. And then, for some unrelated reason, you might look at Windows Explorer, and you'll notice that these mysterious X, Y, and Z drives have appeared in Windows Explorer. If I refresh the display, they will appear in alphabetical order. And you have these X, Y, and Z drives that have appeared while your game is running. You certainly do not have an X, Y, or Z drive installed in your computer. And they look suspiciously similar to your main C drive. They look suspiciously similar to your main Windows install. They're going to be the same capacity. They're going to be filled with the same amount of stuff as your C drive. And if you look inside them, you will see that they contain various files related to GameMaker. So the X drive, in this case at least, is going to contain files related to the GameMaker runner. So that's going to be the current version of GameMaker that's running on your computer. These are files that GameMaker needs to build. If you look inside the Y drive, you're going to have a bunch of temporary files relating to pretty much every time you have run your game through the IDE in recent memory. And if you look in the Z drive, you're also going to have a bunch of temporary files related to your game. And this is going to be a different set of files. This is going to be more like settings, and I believe if you run the game through the Yo-Yo compiler, you will see the generated C++ in here. And this is something that has caused a fair amount of confusion for a lot of people over the years. People have raised questions such as, is GameMaker actually a virus? Did GameMaker completely break my Windows installation? Is there something wrong with my computer? And the short answer to that is no. The long answer to that is definitely no. What's going on is that GameMaker likes to create these temporary drives on your computer, and they're basically shortcuts in the form of letter drives in my PC, in this PC. And this is, I think, largely unnecessary. In most cases, if GameMaker didn't do this, you wouldn't have a problem. And you can actually get GameMaker to not do this, and I will explain that in a minute. First, the main reason that this is here is so that if you have a file name that's excessively long, because these files would normally be stored in the application data in your user folder. So if you go to C:/users/ your username, app data, roaming, GameMaker Studio 2, it'll end up in here, and that file path can get fairly long. And if you have a file on your computer with a really excessively long path name or a really excessively long file name, I think the safe threshold is something like 260 characters, then odd things such as the file failing to open when you try to open it can start to happen, and that can cause problems. That's definitely not something that you really have to worry about under normal computer use, but when you try to do things like build your games for mobile devices, especially I think Android is a bit of an offender in this department, then that can start to become a problem. And the file names that are generated for building Android executables can become quite long. And to try to head off potential issues like that, GameMaker will create these temporary drives on your computer to act as shortcuts. And these will be removed automatically when you close your game. So if I X out of the game and if I refresh Windows Explorer, you can see they're gone. They will also be cleared when you close GameMaker. Although it is possible, if something happens in your game that causes GameMaker itself to crash, that those temporary drives will stay there. And you can actually, if that happens, delete them yourself. You can if you restart your computer, they'll go away. If you want to, you can actually use the commands that GameMaker uses to get rid of them. And that is the subst, the substitute command in the Windows command prompt. And the substitute command is a pretty simple one as far as Windows command prompt commands go. If I were to open one up, and if I were to say substitute, the drive letter can be let's go with Z, and the path can be something like C, users, and my username. This will simply create a substitute drive in Windows Explorer, in this PC in Windows Explorer. And if I were to click on it, you can see that it would go to my user folder. And if you wanted to delete one, so if GameMaker failed to delete the substitute drive on its own for whatever reason, you could type, substitute/D, substitute Z:/D, and that will just make it go away. And if I do that, and if I were to go to Windows Explorer, you can see that it is no longer there. So if for whatever reason you want to get rid of these substitute drives after GameMaker is closed, that's how you do it. It's fairly straightforward. If you want to turn these off completely, let's say that they're really driving you crazy and you want to turn them off completely. You can do that. You can go to File, Preferences, and General Settings, and where is it? Compiling. You can untick the Use Substitute for Drive Paths option and click Apply. And for the most part, when you do this, nothing bad will happen at all. The game will just work the same way as it did before. We will still be able to run our game in Windows. And if we go back to this PC, let's refresh the display just for good measure. We will have no X, Y, and Z drives. So if those were driving you crazy, you can just turn those off. If you are doing something like building a game for Android and you are having funny issues when building your game relating to excessively long file paths, you may want to go and turn that back on. But otherwise, there really is no harm in turning this option off. As a bit of a fun fact, I may actually be the reason that this option exists. There was a period of time a while ago when there was, to make a long story short, something wrong with my command prompt settings, and it was blocking the substitute command, which GameMaker tries to use to create these drives. And as a result, I was not able to build games using GameMaker at all, at least on this user account. And that was a whole ordeal. And I submitted a bug to Yo-Yo Games about it, and a few weeks later, in a GameMaker update, this option appeared. And I may or may not have had something to do with that, so that's a fun fact. Anyway, in case you're wondering, I do actually generally have this turned off by default. Not so much because there's anything wrong with my Windows right now that's causing the substitute command to be blocked, but just because the drive letters do annoy me when I see them there, and when my Windows Explorer gets cluttered with a bunch of stuff that doesn't need to be there. And everything I've used GameMaker for, every video I've recorded in the last, 2 years has had that setting turned off and nothing bad has happened. So if you're curious as to whether or not that's a safe option to turn off, I'd say it's pretty safe. Anyway, that's it. If you have wondered what those drive letters are for now, you know. There's nothing wrong with GameMaker, there's nothing wrong with your computer. I'm going to end it off here. So, my name is Michael, I like wizards and dragons and making games. I like to talk about the weirder parts of GameMaker, so if you're interested in that sort of thing, feel free to stick around and subscribe. I have a Patreon, so if you want to contribute towards these videos being made, there will be links to that in all the usual places. Otherwise, I try to post about 2 game dev videos a week, one tutorial, and one Let's Make a Tower Defense game. I hope you all found that useful, and I will see you all later. Special thanks to Kiara Elizabeth, Connor, David Key, Edward Holt, Emily Koyo, Halo Factory, Posho, Syndra Larson, Tusk, and Zenith for supporting these videos. If you want to see your name in the credits or to hear yourself shouted out at the end here, head on over to the Patreon page down in the video description to join the fun.